Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commander's Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, Washington falls to the Dallas Cowboys 25-10 in week number 4, dropping their record to 1-3 on the season. The level of disappointment among the fan base is starting to mount and reach dangerous levels for Ron Rivera and his staff and these players. And I had a bit of a revelation right after the show last night. And, you know, after the dust settles and the smoke clears and you're able to take a deep breath, take a step back. Haven't watched the game. Usually I watch it back a second time. I haven't done that yet. But I've committed most of the game to memory, and obviously the film will be, you know, a very telling thing. And Ron spoke today, and I appreciated what Ron said today, unlike last week where I really didn't want to hear what he had to say because the effort on the field didn't give me hope for the future. At least in this game, I saw a team fighting, battling, and I actually saw something that I think is going to be the foundation and basis for why we have a chance to turn this season around. I'll get to that in a second, but I want to read a comment that I think resonates, that to me is very poignant and is in this particular moment where we are as fans and where we are in this particular season. I think this kind of speaks to why the frustration is the way it is. And I kind of concur with this statement. So I got a message from my guy, Derek B. We go back and forth from time to time in the DMs. And Derek B said, "What up, Lou? I've never drank the Kool-Aid on 12-5, which I know a lot of you didn't. And again, this was my thing. I told you guys to sip slow. I was going out on the limb with 12-5, and I told you 11-6 was probably more realistic than 12-5, but I was aiming for the stars, okay? Shoot me. You know, I'm always a set the bar high and try to die, you know, getting to that point to reach the bar. I don't like setting a low bar and hitting it. There's no gratification in that. So I wasn't willing to be okay with setting the bar at 9-8 and saying, hey, you know, if we hit 9-8, this is a really successful season. No, that's what losers do. And if we felt like we were turning the corner, and if this was the roster that was supposed to, in the schedule, and that's more so than anything else, what I was excited about and hopeful about was the schedule that we were getting, coupled with the offensive firepower that we were supposed to be able to provide. All of those things coupled with how things were set up for us. This was supposed to be the opportunity that we were going to have to take advantage of. Well, Derek B says, I was never drinking the Kool-Aid on 12-5, and I know a lot of you weren't. He says, but I did think we were done with games like we've seen the last 3 weeks. Down 22-0 at Detroit, down 24-0 at halftime to the Philadelphia Eagles. Yesterday's game wasn't as frustrating for me as it was for some of you because I saw very early on in the game what they were trying to do, and I knew what they were. Now, from an offensive standpoint, not being able to complete a 7-yard pass, yeah, that's pretty frustrating. And that was the part of yesterday's game that was frustrating. But the penalties, more so than anything else, put us in the position where it's 3rd and long, and now you don't even have a chance. I mean, how many times were we in 3rd and 17 or more yesterday? We had a 4th and 27. We had a 4th and 17. We had a 4th and 15. You can't live in, first of all, we're not good enough. If all things were going well, we're not good enough to live in those situations. No team really is. But you add to the fact that we're having struggles protecting and offensive woes as an entire team across the board, you definitely can't have situations where you're false starting, which we did on numerous occasions yesterday, intentional grounding, and that's been a problem for Carson Wentz this season. He's got 3 of them now. He leads the league in intentional groundings for a quarterback. You can't have those. You can't have holding penalties. You can't have the pre-snap things happen where it's unforced errors, right? The things that happen before you even snap the football, which we had yesterday. Can't have those. Then you can't have the post-snap penalties that hurt you. So he writes, I'm rarely fooled with this team anymore, but they really made a fool out of me 4 games in. I know I'm done defending them. And to which I responded, on the fool part, me too. And if you watch my channel for, any amount of time, then I'm not the gung-ho, we're going to the playoffs or we're going to the Super Bowl type of fan. Okay. I'm always the guy that tells you, hey, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think we're going to be very good this season. I told you guys that in 2019. We're going to suck this year. It's going to be painful, guys. All right. And, in 2020, I was the voice of reason for a lot of you when we were 1-5 and we were 2-7 and the division stunk. And I'm like, guys, we can still do this. But I told you guys, you got to hang in there. Last year, I said, look, I don't see it with Ryan Fitzpatrick, but we didn't have to go through that because he was done, 17 plays in. And so it was Taylor Heineke, and we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. But I told you guys after the New Orleans game, hey, look, guys, he's a backup quarterback, and that's okay. He was a backup this year, and he's getting an opportunity. But the writing's on the wall. He's a backup quarterback. And the 4-game win streak was nice, and it was fun. But it came crashing down. And again, I would have loved to have seen the playing field be even there, down the stretch, not have the injuries to key players, not have COVID ravage our roster, and see what would have happened. I think we still would have probably ended up losing those ball games. Maybe we beat Philadelphia once. I don't think we would have gotten swept by the Eagles, but that wouldn't have changed our season drastically. Put it that way. We would have been 8-9, I think, probably. I think we still lose to the Cowboys twice, but all in all, I usually am a little bit more cautious when it comes to this team. I'm not one of those people that goes out on the deep end and says, hey, this team is going to win 10 or 11 or 12 games. If everything goes right, maybe you can get to 10. That was my prediction last year. If everything goes right, I told you the floor was 7. We won 7. I said the ceiling is 10. And if everything goes right, and clearly everything did not go right last year, we didn't win 10 games, right? But the last year's schedule was ridiculous. So had we won 10 games, it would have been a miracle, and it would have been one of the best pieces of coaching that we've seen here in Washington since Gibbs 2.0, more likely than not. But we got to 7, and it is what it is. But to Derek B's point, the optimism heading into this season was high. I know I'm partially guilty for some of that because I know I was extremely excited about the upcoming season and the prospects of this team. And it had nothing to do with the name change or any of that. Because, again, I told you guys, I don't really care about any of that shit. I don't care about the name, the uniforms, any of that stuff. Once Redskins died, so did all of the stuff with the uniform and the nostalgia and the fight song and the uniform and all that shit. All that shit died for me, okay? At this point now, I'm rooting for Washington. Whatever the nickname is fine. I'm rooting for Washington, and I want them to win. That's it, right? But we're now 1-3. The last 3 weeks have been painful as a fan. There's no way around that. And Detroit, losing to Detroit, the Lions are 1-3. We're the one win that they have. They've scored the most points in the league this season. The Detroit Lions have scored the most points in the league this season, and they're 1-3, and their one victory has come from us. And they don't suck, by the way. They don't suck. They just aren't good on defense. But they happen to stop us from scoring any points, something they haven't been able to do against anybody else. They stopped us from scoring any points in the entire first half while racking up 22. That's a tough, bitter pill to swallow when you watch Seattle go in there with Geno effing Smith and put up 45 points. And you think to yourself, how is it that they can do that and we can't? Well, we've been down that road already. We've gone through that exercise in futility. It's called coaching, right? But here's where I sit with everything that has transpired, especially the last 3 weeks. Philadelphia 2 weeks ago, or last week rather, 24-0 at halftime. You don't give up a single point in 3 quarters, but in the second quarter you self-destruct. With the turnover, with a 3-and-out right before the half, they gives it right back to Philadelphia. Then you give up a deep ball, then you give up a 4th down touchdown where they were essentially just saying F it. You get that stop, you have a little bit of momentum at 17-0 going into the halftime break, and you get the football, or I think the Eagles actually got the football. So yesterday was, to me, a step in the right direction from this standpoint. They benched Trey Turner. They acknowledged that, and Ron talked about it today, and we'll get to Ron in a second. So they took a step on the offensive line to correcting that. The offensive line, and I haven't watched the all-22s yet. That won't happen until tomorrow for us. If you're a member of the mob, a gold member of the Mob Squad, if you're on Patreon, we're going to get into that film. I surmise, and I can't confirm nor deny this, but I surmise that we're going to watch that film, and there are going to be three things that stand out. The play of the defensive line, specifically Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen. Allen was an animal. I think that might have been his best professional game I've ever seen him play. Okay. He was constantly in the backfield. They could not block Jonathan Allen. I don't know what he was on, I don't know if it was the black uniforms or what. He thought he was back at Bama or something, but he was a man possessed yesterday. You'll see that. You'll see that we ran the football very effectively. You don't need to go back and watch that on the all-22s. It'll be fun to watch, but you don't need to go back to see that we had four guys have over 40 yards and we averaged over 5 yards a carry yesterday. We ran the football very effectively. And then the third thing that you will see is that the offensive line was better. It was better. That's what I think you'll see. Now, I can't confirm that, but I think that's what we'll ultimately see is that the offensive line wasn't terrible yesterday, but the game plan was, outside of running the football. The passing game was terrible. So here's where I sit now at 1-3. Season is on the brink of, I think, going in a direction that you can't afford it to go in if you're Ron Rivera, if you're Daniel Snyder, if you're this organization. You're essentially a startup business, all right? You're trying to bring fans back to FedEx Field. This is not the way to do it. And so you have to win. The time is now if you're going to turn this season around. I said this last night. I'm doubling down on this. If you want to have a season, you can't dig a 1-5 hole. You can't dig a 2-4 hole. The time is now. You have to win against the Tennessee Titans on Sunday. And they're starting to turn their thing around. They're 2-2 now after starting 0-2. Here's what we saw yesterday that gives me hope that this season is not lost. Early on in the game yesterday, it was abundantly clear that they were going to run the football. I said this in the Mob Squad. I said, do you guys see what they're doing? You see what this is, right? This is their attempt at taking pressure off the offensive line by running the football, neutralizing the pass rush, slowing that down, and then hoping that the run game works so effectively that it opens up opportunities for play action fake, which by and large, the running game was largely successful yesterday and should have given us more opportunities. But what happened was the penalties erased a lot of the opportunities that we would have had to do anything, and it put us in a position. But long story short, I won't bore you with the specifics. Here's exactly what they're looking to do. The 4-game win streak we had last year. That is how they're going to try to win games. This pipe dream that I had, and this was a fallacy. I made this thing up in my head, and I gave us this ridiculously explosive offense because we had a quarterback and we thought we had an offensive line and we had all these weapons. And somehow I got carried away with this notion and idea that this offense could score over 30 points 6 times this year. Silly me, okay? That's a 00 type of statement that I made. And the statement that I made all season was, oh, yeah, right, this offense. No, Ron, I told you he got too excited, all offseason talking about that 4-game win streak. How many times did you hear me say that? Ron is really excited, and Ron keeps talking about that 4-game win streak. Well, guess what? The game on Sunday was exactly the games that we played during the 4-game win streak last year, specifically the Seattle game and the Raiders game. The Carolina game and the Tampa Bay game were outliers because we were actually proficient offensively in those games. We scored points. That's not what the teams that won 17-15 did. They just did barely enough. They ran the football. They played ball control. They kept the defense off the field, and they just did enough. That's where we're heading towards. And at the end of the day, I don't really care what it looks like. But they gave us a glimpse of what they think this offense. Now, here's what Carson Wentz's role in this is supposed to be. You run the football. You play ball control. You slow down the pass rush, and right when that defense starts to relax, when they start to really gear up to stop the run, and they don't come after him, that's when they're supposed to be able to go play action fake and make you pay over the top and get chunk plays, something that we weren't able to do last year. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But right now, this team is trending towards run the football on first down, run the football on second down, and whatever we got left, we'll try to throw it and pick it up. So run it on first down, get 5. Run it on second down, get 2. It's 3rd and 3. We'll throw it and try to pick up 4 yards. That's what we're turning into. That's where we're going offensively. Run it on first down, get 4. Run it again on second down, get 1. Now it's 3rd and 5. Now you have to get 6 through the passing game. That's where we're heading as an offense. Don't know if you saw that or not, but I'm telling you that's where we're going. And now that we're getting Brian Robinson back potentially, Ron sounds very enthused about that and sounds optimistic. That's where they're heading, and it may change some things. So let's transition from here, because Ron spoke today, and Ron said a lot of, I was encouraged by Ron. I'll just say this, and I know you guys don't care what Ron has to say, and I don't blame you, okay? A lot of you got out of the car yesterday. A lot. This was the most people that got out of the car. I even had one get out of the trunk yesterday. My guy bear it down and got out of the trunk. So people are leaving in droves, and they're leaving from different compartments that I didn't even know people existed in out of the vehicle. And they're walking, and they're like, yo, I'll see you later. And I told you, look, if this thing doesn't work out, I'll meet you there. I'll be getting out as well. But I'm not out of the whip yet, okay? But a lot of people got out of the car yesterday, understandably. So, however, let's talk about all the things Ron talked about that were pertinent to me, all right? And as a fan should be of news to you and of importance to you. So Ron talked about the injury situation. So let's tackle that first. Jahan Dotson, I told you guys yesterday, I'm worried about Jahan. He left the game. He did not return. I saw him grimacing on multiple occasions. I think he first injured the hamstring. Ron keeps talking about the play where he got held on, which is the play he ultimately came out of the game on and tapped out and didn't return. I think he first injured that hamstring on the little split play where Carson escapes the pocket, rolls out to his right, throws it to Jahan down the field, and Jahan has to kind of fall down to adjust to catch the football. I think that's where the injury first occurred. He fell kind of awkwardly. He got up grimacing on that play. If you watch it, now, I told you, I see everything in real time for the most part. He got up kind of grimacing, and he wasn't right, but he stayed in the game. And so I think that's where it first occurred, and I think the holding penalty is what set it off, and then he was like, okay, I got to get out of here. So it sounds like that's going to be a more likely than not a 2-week injury. Anytime you're dealing with a skill player and a hamstring, you definitely do not want, because we were there with Curtis Samuel last year. Now his was a groin, but then it evolved into a hamstring. You just don't want to do that with the receiver. You don't want to yo-yo. So I could, and again, remember, we play on Sunday and then we play 4 days later on a Thursday. I don't see him playing in the next 2 games. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. The next 2 games is enough time for him to, recuperate. And then maybe in 3 weeks from now, when we take on the Green Bay Packers, he'll be ready to get back in the lineup, and we'll need him for that game. So that's the hope. Ron said 1 to 2 weeks. Again, he's not getting a full 2 weeks because we don't play this Sunday and then the following Sunday. We play this Sunday and then Thursday. So I don't think he'll be back for the next 2 games. This is why we have depth at receiver. This is why we should be okay. Next man up, you slide in Dax Mill, you slide in Cam Sims, and you slide in De'Ami Brown, and you keep the party going. We should be fine, okay? And he talked about activating, because now it's pup list day, right? The guys that had started the season on the pup list are now eligible to be activated off the pup list, and then have 21 days for them to be put onto the active roster. They're starting the shot clock on Brian Robinson on Wednesday, and he will practice this week. Wednesday is a fully padded practice. They want to see how he responds to contact, and then they will go from there in determining whether he'll be able to play this Sunday versus the Tennessee Titans. I'm just going to tell you right now with how I think they want to morph this offense. Remember the Eagles last year got off to a funky start, and their head coach was so hell-bent on running his shit. You know, he wanted to come in there and he wanted to throw the football, and then he realized, like, okay, I got a quarterback that's essentially a running back playing the position. I got this beast of an offensive line. I got all these running backs. What am I doing? Like, this isn't maximizing what we have as a football team. This isn't taking advantage of our strengths. And in the middle of the season, he came to a conscious decision. My shit doesn't work for this team. I can integrate a little bit of the stuff that I want to do, but ultimately, I got to scrap that. We got to run the football, and that's how we're going to win football games. And then they became the number one rush offense in the league. They ended up winning 9 games and making the playoffs. That's essentially what's about to transpire here. I'm not saying we're going to become the number one rush offense in football, but what I'm telling you is this is the closest we've been to an actual run offensive line with Sadiq Charles in there at guard, with Andrew Norwell at guard. These are run blocking guards, okay? Sam Cosmi showed the ability to be a run blocking tackle last year. I think Charles Leno is solid. He's not going to be, put a dick in the dirt type of dude, but he's going to be good enough, serviceable enough in the run game. And again, I don't know what they're going to do at center, because also Ron said, and he already alluded to this last week, and I told you as much, but he doubled down on it. They're bringing Tyler Larson off of the PUP list. He's going to be activated on Wednesday along with Brian Robinson. He's going to practice this week, and we'll see what they decide to do with that. They may decide to just stick with Nick Martin. He's been getting reps. He played last week. But they may say, you know what, Tyler is better equipped to handle this offensive line. We trust him more. We'll see. They may just keep Tyler on the men's and keep him backing up Nick Martin in the event that they need him. And they'll feel so much more confident being able to go to him instead of having to go to West. West comes back and they'll have their full complement of guys that can help on the offensive line. So we'll see what they decide to do. I'll see how Nick Martin played and see if he's good enough to get the job done. We'll watch it on the All-22s, but I'm essentially telling you, if they get Brian Robinson back, it's going to open up the opportunity for them to do the things that they want to do. And Ron sounds encouraged by that. And it's going to also allow them to take Antonio Gibson and turn him into a weapon, because they haven't been able to utilize him in that sense because they had to be cautious about him, knowing that they needed him as their starting running back. Now they can go back to putting him on kickoff returns, which could be a gift or a curse. We don't know. We'll see. That might be a net zero, and it may not change anything. It may actually hurt us. He may start bringing it out and only getting to the 17-yard line, right? But he could also break it. He was a prolific kickoff return man at Memphis. So we'll see if that has any impact. But more so, the impact of Gibson no longer being your bell cow, but still touching it in the backfield. Don't get it twisted. Is now he becomes more of a threat out of the backfield. There aren't many defenders that can cover him out of the backfield as a receiver, as a true threat out of the backfield, which is why I don't know why they haven't been doing that more regardless. But again, I save those types of questions for myself, because asking this staff that makes zero sense, because clearly they don't get these types of things. But at the end of the day, I think Brian Robinson coming back is going to allow Ron to do what he thought he was going to be able to do from week one, which is be diverse, but be more run dependent and have everything kind of funnel through the run game offensively. And you saw how much fresher the defense was. Even though we weren't scoring points, we were possessing the football. Time of possession was neck and neck for the first 3 quarters of this football game. Literally. We did what we needed to do to keep the defense fresh. The defense continues to get off the field on third downs. They also continue to give up big plays. And there's frustration there. We'll talk more about that as the week progresses with some of the big plays that are being given up. And the film will tell the story. But we got limitations on defense. There's nothing we can do. Kendall Fuller can't run anymore. Okay, he got blown by Noah Brown. Like, he can't run anymore. So they have to be careful how they put him in certain situations. So you're going to see less and less blitzing, I think, from Jack Del Rio, because now you're compromised on the back end. Unless you give him help. You have to give him help. And then the help can't fall down on the ground. The help can't go around the play. Like, if you're going to actually be a help defender, you actually have to help that guy out. So we'll see what happens, with that. But Ron also talked about, so he was asked by one of the news guys for one of these local stations. And it's the black dude. I never remember any of these news guys' names. But he works for one of these news stations around here. I'm not from here, so I don't know the local TV stations, but you guys know who the hell I'm talking about. Anyway, he's the one that always asks non-football questions like, hey, what do these jerseys, mean to you guys? That's what these news dudes do, They ask these weird questions. But this one was actually a question that I wanted to hear the response, because he said, look, on social media, the fans are really frustrated, and he's like, I know you don't really pay attention to social media, this, that, and the third, but overall, the fans are starting to become frustrated, and so to that, what do you say to a fan base that is growing more and more upset about the start to the season for this football team? And he's like, he did the whole, I don't, get on social media thing. And, I don't really concern myself with what's being said there, which he shouldn't. But then Ron made a sharp turn in the right direction when he got pissed off. All right. And not at the media, but at the situation and the way things have unfolded. And Ron got passionate, something that I think fans want to see more of, because we're frustrated and we don't want to see someone that's kind of just like going through the motions. Like, we want to see that you actually give an F, right? Seeing a picture of Daniel Snyder hugged up with Jerry Jones before the game, and the Washington Commanders social media accounts posting that as if that's some shit that we want to see is so tone deaf that I can't even begin to explain to you how ridiculously stupid that is for your brand, right? I get it. That's your owner. He pays the bills. He keeps the lights on. So you're trying to acquiesce to him. We don't want to see that shit. The social media pages are for us. Dan Snyder's not looking at that shit. We are. We don't want to see his ass, and we definitely don't want to see him hugged up with Jerry Jones. And what that says to us is, F you, we don't care. I'm making money hand over fist. That's all I care about. As a fan, that boils your blood, right? So when you see Ron get worked up and he starts, and again, you don't have to cuss in order for someone to know that you're upset. I just need to see passion. You know what gets us juiced up after games when we win is when they show us those little clips, and they're about a minute long, and it's Ron getting fired up after a win. When Ron says, no one dictates to us. We got all we need in this room. That gives you goosebumps. Why? Because he's getting fired up and it gets you fired up. And when you're frustrated, you want to see that other people are. You know why you guys love Jonathan Allen? Because Jonathan Allen's pissed off after every game when we lose. And he tells it like it is. And he is like a barometer for the locker room. And so he's the one that you attach yourself to, because he's the closest to being a fan in terms of the way he responds. Now, Ron dropped the F-bomb. They didn't blank it out either. Ron dropped a shit. And when he was talking about the frustration that he's having right now and how fans should feel, and he gets it, and he said, look, and this is one of the first times he's acknowledged the fact that, bro, our frustration didn't start with you showing up here 3 years ago. Our frustration runs long and deep with this ownership group, okay? The losing has been consistent, and it has been brutal to suffer through as a fan. And the start to this season is more of the same. When we thought it could be different this year, you told us it would be different this year. So he acknowledged that. And he acknowledged that with passion. And so I'll say this. That gave me hope. Couple that with this new philosophy that we're going to have. We're going to run a football game. Okay, so for those of you who, weren't keeping score at home at the beginning of the show, when I was trying to explain to you what we got a glimpse of in week 4's loss to the Cowboys, our new identity is going to be run it, and then throw it when necessary, okay? Run it, and now maybe play action fake opens up and we got a shot opportunity. We're going to play more like, and again, our offense looks nothing like Tennessee. It looks nothing like Green Bay. It looks nothing like Cleveland. It looks nothing like Minnesota, but we're going to operate like those teams. Those teams heavily rely on the production of the run game and what comes off of that, the play action fake. Now, I want to see them, and unlike the Green Bays and the Minnesotas and the Clevelands who run a ton of boot action and San Francisco off of their run game, we don't do that. I would like to see us do that. I would like to see us stick it in the belly of Brian Robinson, come out of the backside of that thing, and throw it to a wide open Terry McLaurin in the flats or a wide open Logan Thomas in the flats. I would like to see Amani Rodgers get a touch. He hasn't touched the football since week 1. It's not hard. It's not rocket science, which is what frustrates me about Scott Turner, because it's not as hard as you make it out to be. So this is what our offense is going to be, and that's going to keep our defense fresh. And we saw what a fresh defense looks like yesterday. Okay. They came out guns a-blazing. They stopped the run for the second consecutive week. Ron talked about that. And I talked about that yesterday. And that's a great sign because Tennessee's coming to town. Green Bay's coming to town here in a bit. You got Indianapolis coming, or we're going to Indy soon. The Vikings are showing up here shortly. And if we can continue to do what we did, Chicago's coming, or we're going to Chicago on Thursday Night Football in a couple of weeks. If we can continue to do what we did the last 2 weeks, in terms of run defense, we're going to have a chance to beat every single team that's coming up on the schedule, including the Green Bay Packers, because a lot of what they're doing right now, they're not in sync in the passing game at all, are the Packers. But you know what's keeping them afloat is their ability to run the football, and of course, Aaron Rodgers. If we can stop the run, we're going to have a chance in every single game, moving forward. Because a lot of the teams that we face on the schedule are run-heavy football teams. So it starts this upcoming week. And again, I got excited listening to Ron talk about, what he envisions this team being moving forward, thinking that they found the right guys on the offensive line. And the jury's still out on that. I'm not buying that shit. We'll see what happens. I still don't trust Scott Turner. I'm really disappointed in Scott Turner, and to the point where now I don't trust Scott Turner. And I felt like going into the season, Scott's going to have a field day this year. We may lose Scott Turner after the season because he's such a dynamic play caller. That's false. Okay, Scott Turner has lost all footing and traction with me. I have little to no respect for his ability to adjust and adapt to what's happening in front of him, and also to take advantage of the playmakers that you have. Despite not having the offensive line up front that you want, there are ways to get guys involved. Again, I can't state this enough, but Amani Rodgers hasn't touched the football. He's the most athletically gifted tight end that we have. The only one of them that can actually run, and he hasn't touched the football since week 1. Where's the psychological sense in that? It makes absolutely no, and I'm not talking about on a check down. I'm talking about a play designed to get Amani Rodgers, like the only time he's touched it this year, which was a tight end screen. Where's the psychological sense in that? So I said all of that to say this. I'm at wit's end with this staff and with they didn't overpromise and underdeliver like normal. Okay, they didn't do that. Ron hasn't done that since he's gotten here, but they did heighten the expectations, and the product that we've gotten on the field hasn't matched the expectations that they set for themselves. They didn't ever say, "Hey, we expect this," but they said, "We expect to be better." Well, this isn't better. This is the same starts to the season that we have gotten off to the first 2 years. Last year was 2-2, and then we were 2-6. The year before that, we were 1-0, then we were 1-5. Okay, this is trending in that direction, so it's not better. So we need to see better, and it needs to start on Sunday versus the Titans. And again, even if we don't get Brian Robinson back this week, he's coming back at some point, whether it's this week or next week. Depending on how he feels once he goes through a practice where he gets hit. We'll see how he responds. But that's going to open up. But I tell you this, Williams looked good, all right? And J.D. McKissick ran it well, and Antonio Gibson ran it well. So whether we have him or not, we've got a new identity. And we're not gonna be winning games more likely than not. We're not winning games 31-27. We're going back to 20-15. That's how we were going to beat Dallas yesterday. That score was never going to be 29-24. That score, if we won that game, it was going to be 20-15. It was going to be 23-19, something along those lines. It was never going to be a high-scoring game. And that's how we're going to have to win football games. pretty much like the 4-game win streak last year, which warmed Ron's heart when he talked about it all offseason. So we're going back to that. And look, with the defense playing it the way they've been playing the last couple of weeks, specifically in Sunday's game. But really the third down defense coupled with the run defense now has given me hope. Now they got to start creating turnovers. They almost did it twice yesterday. And the penalties can't happen. That hadn't been a Ron Rivera problem. I don't see that continuing to be a problem moving forward. So I'm not going to worry about undisciplined football because that hasn't been a staple of Ron Rivera here or in Carolina. But can't have that, especially with the way we're going to try to win now. You can't have negative plays when you're running it on first down, running it on second down, and throwing it on third down. And have the occasional first down throw or the occasional second down throw. But for the most part, want to run it, now we want to throw it. When you're doing that, you can't get into 3rd and 13 because it was 3rd and 3 and now you got a holding penalty. Now your drive's dead because you're not built to pick up 13 yards. We're going to have to stay on schedule. And the explosive plays will only come when you get a 9-yard run on first down. And now, hell, it's 2nd and 1. You can do whatever the hell you want because you can always come back and run it on 3rd and 1, right? So now you can take a shot. Ooh, shit gets spicy now, right? But if it's 2nd and 5, probably need to run it again to get it to 3rd and 3, right? So we'll see what happens. But let's take a trip around the NFC East quickly and we'll get out of here. So obviously with the loss, that's 2 straight losses to NFC East foes in a row. So the family business isn't going according to schedule right now and plan. We're 0-2 in the division, which puts you behind the 8 ball because, again, you're not allowed to play bonus football if you can't get to it at a bare minimum a 500 record in your division. So we'd have to win the next 3 out of 4 games in the division to achieve that. And so we haven't gotten off to a great start. And the rest of the division, one of the most sickening things that has transpired over the last 24 hours for me as a fan. I can't speak for any of you out there, but one of the most sickening things that has transpired is all offseason, I've talked about wanting this division, and I told you I thought it would because of the schedule, right? And I said, only the teams that take advantage of the schedule will be successful. The teams that don't are going to continue to suck. Well, everybody in the division got the memo except the Commanders, okay? So the Giants have taken advantage of the likes of Carolina and Chicago and Tennessee, and they're taking advantage of the schedule as it's been presented to them. The Eagles are taking advantage of the schedule. They haven't lost a ball game yet. And so are the Cowboys. They've taken advantage of what's been put in front of them, and they haven't missed except for 1 game this season against Tampa Bay. And so the Eagles are 4-0. The Cowboys are 3-1. The Giants are 3-1. And little old us, as always, bringing up the rear, stinking the joint up, we're 1-3. But the thing that has hurt the most is like sticking a knife in and twisting it. Just twisting it even more. It's already in there pretty good, right? You don't really need the knife to be twisted because we're 1-3. We suck. We can't do anything offensively. You don't need to twist the knife anymore. It's already in there. It's lodged in there pretty good. We're hurting already. And you know what's twisting the knife? When I look up on NFL.com and I see NFC East, the best division in football, question mark. I see on ESPN.com, NFC East back, best division in football, question mark. And we're not a part of that discussion. We're the reason that this division isn't a consensus best in football. If we're 2-2, if we're 3-1, like the rest of the division, guess what? Everybody around football is saying this is the best division in football. There isn't a team under 500 in this division. Hell, if we're just 2-2 right now, we beat Detroit, and we're 2-2. Everybody's saying this is the best division in football. They're questioning it because, hey, they're still Washington. They still suck ass. Yeah, the Giants are playing good. Not sure about them. They can't score points, but they're 3-1. Eagles are right now statistically best team in football. They're the only undefeated team. Cowboys are getting it done without Dak Prescott. He'll be back eventually. But that defense, man, they're 3-1 as well. We're not even a part of the discussion that I begged for this division to be. I said, man, I want this division to be what it was in the early 90s, late 80s, mid to late 80s, early 90s, which was the best in football. When the Eagles were good with Buddy Ryan, when the Cowboys, they were good in the early to mid 80s. They with Tom Landry, then they kind of hit that downswing at the back end of the 80s, and then Jimmy shows up in the early 90s, and they're back to being on the top of the mountain, right? And then obviously Gibbs from 81 to 92. We were the class of not just the NFC East, we were the class of the NFL. And then there was the Giants with Bill Parcells, right? Mid 80s, late 80s, wins Super Bowls, wins it again in 1990, right? And so premier marquee matchups, East Division with the Eagles, the Giants, the Cowboys, and Washington. We're not even a part of that discussion. It feels like because we're the Commanders now, we're no longer the Redskins, that we're not a part of that group anymore. So the Eagles, Giants, and Cowboys are like, hey, we'll hold the East down. You be the Commanders down there at the bottom by yourself. That shit hurts. But then again, being a fan of this team is always painful, it feels like. So get used to it. I'm used to it. It doesn't stop hurting, though. Anyway, this division's playing good football. We're not a part of it right now. We suck. And we got to start trying to turn it around. And again, it has to. This is not optional. If it doesn't happen, then we have a problem. It has to start on Sunday against the Tennessee Titans. And they're not going to come in here and lay down for us. They have an injury to one of their receivers. And so here's the way I process this. Treylon Burks, the rookie wide receiver, just injured himself. I think he got something going on with his toe. He's going to be out for at least 2 to 3 weeks, meaning he's not playing against us this weekend. All right. Jahan Dotson, our rookie wide receiver, he's going to be out with a hamstring. So we're both going to be losing our first-round pick wide receivers. The difference is they don't have depth at receiver. They really need Treylon Burks to be healthy. They don't have anything at receiver. Now it's just Robert Woods. And if you want to add the Phillips kid in, Kyle Phillips, the rookie receiver from UCLA, knock yourself out. They don't have anything at receiver. They got a bunch of tight ends. They got nothing at receiver now with Treylon Burks being injured. We got depth at receiver. We need Jahan Dotson. We want him out there, but we got other guys that can step up. We got to take advantage of the Tennessee Titans. We'll talk more about that as the week progresses, but I just wanted to plant that seed now. I told you guys I wasn't getting out of the car. I'm not getting out of the car yet, but this is one we got to have. I felt the sense of urgency for the first time this season from Ron. He's not calling it code red, and he's not going to do that because when you do that, there's no going back. But I felt the sense of urgency from Ron today. He understands. Hey, unlike past years where the division was kind of hanging in the balance and you could get off to a slow start, no one was running away with anything. The rest of the division is leaving our ass. And whether we're coming along or not, they're going. And Ron realizes, hey, we got to do something. Now we're 0-2 in the division, and these bastards are taking off. We better do something to catch up, or they'll leave us. So I felt the urgency. Now I need that to translate to points on the scoreboard, and more importantly, a new mark in the left-hand column. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News. I'll be live tonight after the game. If you're a Gold member, we'll be live more likely than not tomorrow watching the film. If not tomorrow, definitely Wednesday, we'll be live watching the film together. If you're on Patreon, same thing. And so look forward to going through that film with you guys because I think there's going to be some things promising from that film. I'm telling you right now, watching the film, you're going to feel a lot better. I know I always do. You're going to feel a lot better about the performance against Dallas after watching the film than, just walking away from it, with the TV copy. I'm telling you right now, you're going to feel so much better. I know it's usually therapy for me because I'm like, okay, it's not hopeless. That year in 2020, when I would go back and watch the film and I would come back to you guys and say, look, man, I'm telling you, it's not as bad as you think. The reason I could do that was because I watched the film. There were games this year where I watched the film and I'm like, this isn't good enough. I don't think I'm going to feel that way tomorrow or Wednesday, but we will see. In any event, you guys take care. Look forward to chopping it up with you. Do me a favor. Subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content if you haven't already done so. Like this video and turn on your notification bell so you don't miss the thing. Until next time, you guys have a good one.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30.